Hello, all you fluorine inhalers out there, and welcome to Undeclared Bajor.
Some aliens out there living on fluorine. That's, if they're listening, good for them.
Oh, yeah. But I do not recommend inhaling fluorine. My name is Fletcher. About to say hello is Data.
Hey.
Today we're going to discuss and review Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 4, Episode 7, Starship Down. Alternate title, The Karema Dilemma.
Oh, that's cute. Okay.
You thought I was going for some kind of submarine pun?
Yes, I assumed, yeah.
Or a battleship pun? No. Although I did want to sing, we all live in a Star Trek submarine. As always, you can expect full spoilers up through the episode being discussed, and a possible small number of minor spoilers for later in the series, but we'll keep those to an appropriate minimum. Although we will spoil every single other movie, video game, and TV show in the universe.
Wow, that's a bold... We're going to be here a while.
We claim the right to do that.
Oh, okay. That's a different thing.
Yeah. Starship Down originally aired on November 6, 1995. And I think for today, because we were kind of talking about the environment of the 90s last time.
Yep.
And we haven't had a checkup on what's been going on in the world for a while. So what's been going on in the world this season? I just pulled the Wikipedia article for 1995 in a little impromptu segment here. But on October 2nd, the day that the Way of the Warrior aired, English band Oasis released their second studio album, What's the Story, Morning Glory, which proves to be one of the most successful of all time, and that is the album with Wonderwall on it. So, Wonderwall entered our lives on October 2nd.
Okay.
And then the next day on October 3rd, former American football star O.J. Simpson is found not guilty of double murder in a criminal trial for the deaths of former wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman.
I remember when that happened because our teachers were very interested in this trial. And
this is, I think, no matter who you were, how old you were, this is something that you remember if you were alive. Maybe if you lived in, I don't know, some remote island country somewhere, but otherwise. October 16th, the Million Man March was held in Washington, D.C. The event was conceived by Nation of Islam founder Louis Farrakhan. And I checked, and estimates are that less than 1 million people showed up to that. It just says November, the Indian government officially renames the city of Bombay, restoring the name Mumbai. November 2nd, the Supreme Court of Argentina orders the extradition of ex-SS Captain Erich Priebke. Where they extradited him to, I don't know. Presumably Israel, but you never know.
It was,
I'll just click on it and look it up.
It was Colombia. So I was trying to think of some place on the other side of the world, and I couldn't.
Apparently there's a lot of red tape in this extradition.
There probably is a lot of red tape in most extraditions, to be fair.
After 17 months of delays, the Argentinian Supreme Court ordered that Priebke was to be extradited to Italy in 1996.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, the Italians got him. And on November 4th, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin is assassinated at a peace rally in Tel Aviv. So, a lot of stuff going on in the world. But anyway...
But what was the episode of The Simpsons from this week? That's the real question.
Well, now we're going to look it up.
This is November 1995?
Yep, November 6, 1995.
November 5th, 1995 was King Size Homer.
Oh, I love that episode.
That is a good one, yep.
One of my favorites. So Starship Down was written by David Mack and John J. Ordover.
Yeah, so
I think these are some new guys
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so John J. Ordover, former editor at Pocket Books, and for many years responsible for overseeing the company's line of Star Trek books.
Oh.
So he's been in Star Trek for a while. And it says partially responsible for the rebirth of Star Trek fiction in the 90s.
Huh.
Being the driving force behind such series-bending concepts as Invasion. I read those books. The Eugenics Wars novels. Read those books too. And Star Trek New Frontier, Trek's first novel-only series. Did not read those.
Wait, what do you mean first novel-only series?
So it's like, it's about a ship and a crew that only appears in the novels.
Oh, okay. Got it.
In 2003, he left Pocket Books to start up a book packager, though he did continue to work on a few projects at Pocket, and ended up part owner of Phobos Books, where he holds the title of editor-in-chief. So he's mostly a book guy, but for this particular episode, I guess David Mack was like his writing partner on some stuff. And so David Mack, by the way, 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine, a consultant on Lower Decks and Prodigy, and has also written many Star Trek novels and comics. So,
okay, so John J. Ordover was the publisher guy.
Yes, Ordover was the publisher. Mack is, I guess, his writing partner or whatever. Yeah. And so, let's see, they co-wrote Starship Down and the story treatment for It's Only a Paper Moon, which is an episode I quite like. That's coming up later. Let's see. He does novels and things. It lists a bunch of different stuff that he's done, a bunch of awards he's won in writing circles.
Sure.
So these are both book guys. I guess they popped into TV to do some stuff. But so for the concept of this episode, it's like David Mack calls up his writing partner John Ordover, and he's like, "Hey, I just watched Das Boot last night. I want to sink the Defiant."
I was just waiting to hear what submarine movie somebody watched on TV that inspired this episode. Could do worse than Das Boot, though.
Well, yeah.
I was wondering, was it Das Boot or was it The Hunt for Red October?
Well, and then in the quotes, they're like, the original pitch, this was sort of the Poseidon adventure. So I guess that comes in here too.
Well, this is also very reminiscent of a Next Generation episode.
Yes, and the Next Generation episode that gets mentioned here is Disaster.
Right.
And it's funny because in that episode, Riker's like, "Oh man, everybody on the bridge is probably dead," but O'Brien is one of the few people alive on the bridge. And then in this episode, O'Brien's like, "Oh, everybody on the bridge is probably dead."
Oh, was that a deliberate reference, or
no idea? It doesn't mention what they were thinking in the writing.
Because in the episode, it seems kind of weird.
It's weird that you would make that assumption, but at the same time, like in the Disaster episode, they're like, we have to assume that everybody else is dead since we can't contact them and can't ask them to help in any way. So it may just be that same sort of thing where it's like, okay, well, all we can do is assume that they're dead and try our best.
Yeah.
There's a lot about the concept for the episode because originally the idea was that they would be underwater. Ooh. And in the Defiant is sinking in the sea of an alien planet, and everyone has to get off before the structural integrity field fails and the ship is crushed. So I don't know if they were actually destroying the Defiant in this. It sounds like it, and they were like, "Oh, this will be like a bottle episode. Like, it's just gonna be on existing sets with existing cast. This will be cheap." And then they're like, it says after reading the teleplay, producer Steve Oster is like, "It's a great script, and when you make the movie, I'd love to see it because like this would be super expensive." Is basically
nice.
And so to make it cheaper, they changed it to being a gas giant that they're sinking quote unquote into, and apparently that required them to cut out like the writer's kind of favorite scene. David Mack specifically says like, "We had an idea for this great visual where water is seeping through a cracked bulkhead, and like." Odo dives into the ocean to help save them, and he the water turns to like a gold viscous fluid seeping through the bulkhead, and then it turns into Odo. And he's like, we thought it would have been the coolest thing to ever come down the pike, which I don't know if it's all that, but it would have been a cool shot.
Yeah, cool idea.
Yeah. So they were bummed to have to lose that shot in this version.
Mm. And the director was Alexander Singer. I don't know if I said that part yet.
Yeah, we've seen that guy.
So in this episode, Captain Sisko has brought the Defiant to a remote system of the Gamma Quadrant, which I don't know what qualifies as a remote in the Gamma Quadrant.
Maybe it's just like away from Dominion territory or something. I don't know.
To facilitate trade talks between the Karima and the Ferengi.
Well, no, the Karima and the Federation.
Well, sure, but okay, yeah. I wasn't clear on how the whole thing worked, so I guess Quark and the Ferengi were sort of the go-betweens of the Karima and the Federation or something.
Yeah, they're acting as like the go-betweens, because I guess the Dominion doesn't care about the Ferengi coming into their territory.
Sure. They're not one of the powers they're afraid of.
Yeah.
Unlike the previous episode, the whole cast has apparently decided to come along, except for Jake and Odo. Quark is there as the Ferengi contact to the Kurima, and it soon comes out that there are some suspicious irregularities with how he's been conducting this business.
Shocker.
Oh my gosh, Quark, I can't believe it.
I am shocked. Shocked. Well, not that shocked.
While Sisko mediates, everybody else hangs out on the bridge. Worf is stern to a junior officer we've never seen before, setting up his arc for the episode.
Yeah.
Dax and Kira sit at a table that I've never noticed before.
Clearly, the B story in this episode is a continuation of we need to expand Worf's character for people on Deep Space Nine since he's just shown up.
Kira tells Dax that today is the anniversary of the arrival of the emissary, which is apparently a huge holiday on Bajor. Dax has apparently never heard of this holiday celebrating her best friend, and neither have I.
It is weird that it's just like, oh yeah, it's a big holiday. Like, half the people on the station are Bajoran. Did no one mention this? It's weird.
Yeah. She made it sound like it had been done before, right?
I'm not entirely clear. I mean,
yeah,
you would think, but maybe it's recent. Maybe the Kai is trying to up her popularity after what happened, and so she's doing what people in power always do to make the little people like them, throwing parties.
Right. Suddenly some beeps happen, and someone announces that 2 Jem'Hadar ships have just arrived in the system. Worf calmly orders a red alert and sits down, and we go to credits. Worf's like, red alert, everybody to battle stations. And then it's like, bum, bum, bum.
He's like, he's old hat at battle stations. Right. It's fine.
He's like, I've been through worse. Kurima guy, played by James Cromwell.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention. Is like, oh yeah, those guys are probably here to kill us. They watch as the Kurima ship runs off and dives into the atmosphere, chased by the Jem'Hadar. James Cromwell says that his 23 people are going to die on that ship because he was foolish enough to defy the Dominion. But he says it in the same tone of voice that you might say, I'm going to have to pay full price for this burrito because I was foolish enough to leave my rewards app in the car. Well, let's fly into that gas giant too, says Sisko.
I place the blame more on whoever's in charge of that ship, where Sisko's like, no, if hail them. If they stay here, we can protect them.
Right.
And they're like, screw you guys, we're out of here.
Yep. I don't know. Maybe this is just the Kurima. It's just their natural instinct is to fly into gas giants.
They're the ostriches of the gas giant interstellar community.
Right. Then he sends the Kurima guy down to the mess hall so he can spend the rest of the episode with Quark.
Which apparently Armin Shimmerman and James Cromwell are old buddies.
Oh.
According to Armin Shimmerman in here. He's like, he says, this is one of my personal favorite episodes. First off, because I got to work with my old friend James Cromwell. At that point, I hadn't seen Babe. I had no idea what he'd done in Babe. I just knew him from Shakespeare that we'd done together. Working with Jamie was just sheer delight.
Nice. What year did Babe come out?
Let's see. Babe movie. I don't want to just search for Babes. 1995.
Okay.
So when in 1995, I guess is the question. It must have been before this, since he's talking. Yeah, August 1995. So not long before this. Huh. James Cromwell would have been pretty hot at this point.
Yeah. I guess he was the Uridian guy. That was the episode of Next Gen, though.
Yeah, he was in 2 episodes of Next Gen. He was Jaglom Shrek, information broker.
Right.
And he was Nayrok, an Angosian, or the Prime Minister of Angosia 3, from the episode The Hunted. That's the one with Roga Danar, I believe. Yeah.
So is that the swashbuckling rogue adventurer guy?
No, no. This guy is. Although maybe Roga Danar was the swashbuckling guy, and I'm thinking of the wrong person. Hold on. No, okay, I'm right. This guy's Roga Danar. He was like the engineered super soldier, and like they engineered these super soldiers for their war, and then when the war was over, they're like, yeah, put them in a prison. They're like too annoying to be in normal society.
Oh yeah. Is that the one where like they all go to a prison moon or something?
Yeah,
they don't know it.
A prison moon.
Like they think they get to retire, but they all have to go to prison or something.
Yeah, and this is the episode where famously this guy is such a badass he forces his way physically out of a transporter beam somehow.
Nice. Anyway, where was it? They flew into the gas giant. Sensor range is limited, but Kira and Dax come up with a way to use Tetrion pulses for echolocation or something like that. It has all the same rules as sonar.
Yes.
So they do a ping. You can bounce the ping off of something, but also your ping makes you visible.
They should have just said it was sonar.
Yeah,
like, it's fine.
Why not? Karima Guy comes down to the mess hall where Quark tries to blame the problems with the contracts on Rom.
His first line of defense is always, "Oh, my brother's an idiot."
Yep,
like that's just where he goes.
He's that's foremost in his bag of tricks. But Karima Guy is not impressed. He's not buying it.
Nope.
Back on the bridge, they're able to use the sonar to find the Karima ship, but then they get immediately attacked by the Jem'Hadar and take damage. Dax goes to the Jeffries tube to do some repairs. The ship falls deeper into the atmosphere, and the pressures build. Worf reports that the phaser banks are broken, but Sisko has the idea to rig a couple of atmospheric probes with torpedo warheads. I wasn't clear. Did they ever explain why they can't shoot torpedoes, or were the torpedoes broken too? Or
yeah, he says that Worf tells him that like the torpedo guidance systems won't work in here.
Oh, okay.
But I guess like atmospheric probes are specifically designed to go into atmospheres to probe them. So it's like,
sure.
Maybe you should use that kind of thing in your torpedo guidance system.
Yep. You need to carry some special atmosphere torpedoes.
Yeah,
On your ship.
Apparently, the Defiant was not designed for atmosphere. He tells us, but
right.
He's like, I think that she'll be fine. I mean, he did help design her. So
it just reminds me of that episode of Futurama where it's like 500 atmospheres out there. It's like, well, how many atmospheres can the ship handle? It's like, well, it's a spaceship, so between 0 and 1.
So, not really fair because it does land on the surface of the Earth all the time. So we know that at least one is okay. But
right.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Those are the conditions under which it's been tested. Anyway. Suddenly there's a hull breach on Deck 2 and gas starts flooding in. Oh no, Dax and Muniz are in there. Or Muniz, I don't know how to say that name. Muniz. Which, as soon as O'Brien was like, Muniz, go help Dax, I was like, oh.
R. Oh yeah, that guy's screwed.
Yeah, yeah. R.I.P. Muniz. But Muniz survives the episode. So.
He does, yeah, I was shocked. Has he been, has Muniz been in another episode?
I don't think so. I think he was just one of the big cast of newbies they threw in. Like Stevens was a guy who got a bunch of lines this episode.
Oh yeah.
But Bashir gets to work evacuating the deck, but the force field fails, and Dax and Muniz get hit with gas.
Oh no!
Muniz makes it to safety, amazingly, but Dax is still down. Bashir heroically runs in to save her, sealing the deck behind him. He manages to drag her to safety, but they're trapped, and comms are down. Luckily, Dax's repairs worked. And Muniz's, I guess.
Yeah, no, you got to give him a little bit of credit.
And the ship is able to gain altitude, which Quark is able to detect with his ginormous ears.
So this is one of the scenes that Renee Echevarria calls out that, like, this is, like, left over from, when the script was about the Defiant sinking underwater. And he's just like, it just doesn't, like, doing the same thing with gas is not as good, or doesn't look as good. So he's like, shutting a hatch against an incoming rush of water is straight out of a submarine movie. But when we tried to do that classic scene with gas instead of water, it was hard to translate.
Mm.
It could have been a set piece that viewers would never forget, shutting the hatch and killing your own people. We did the best we could, but there was no tension.
But the money.
Right. And then I like, for the rest of season 4, it says Ira Bear had a running joke where he was like, we could still do that submarine movie and do it right this time.
Nice. It's like we need 2 submarine episodes.
Yeah, nobody will notice. It's fine.
So Quark tells James Cromwell he's impressed he was able to detect his scheming and tries to recruit him into his deviousness. James Cromwell is not impressed.
Nope.
The first atmospheric probe is ready and set to zero in on the first metallic thing it finds, which risks it turning around and hitting the Defiant. Luckily, one of the Jem'Hadar ships shows up just in time and gets taken out by the probe. But not before delivering some pretty bad direct hits to the Defiant. This causes Sisko to fall down and bonk his head, and O'Brien to immediately assume everybody on the bridge is dead.
Sisko got one of those fatal head bonks. That's never good.
Yeah. But after commercial, we see that they're not dead on the bridge. At least not the main characters.
Right, yeah. Some of the characters are dead, but they're people that we didn't know. So.
Right. They're names that have never been uttered on the show before. Worf heads down to engineering to get the power turned back on. Or, which he never does. I guess he just goes down there to control the ship from now on.
Yeah. He goes down there to boss people around.
Right.
And we get a B story about, like, Worf has to learn to... different people need different kinds of management.
Right. Or whether this is the B, C, D, or E story. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, it is kind of a collection of stories going on here.
It's very much like the disaster episode of Next Gen, where it was a bunch of little stories of people dealing with the situation.
I do have to say that it seems weird to me that we've got, like, this Worf needs to learn people management skills story, when I'm just like, but he was chief of security. He had, like, a whole team of security officers that he managed, right? Like, this is not the first time for him, but whatever.
But I mean, those are security guys, not engineers. You know, they don't have to solve complex problems or do any of that stuff.
That's true. Yeah.
But Kira stays behind to tend to Captain Sisko, who has a concussion and needs someone to keep him from falling asleep. So we're doing that whole thing.
Yep. Which I think now, most recently, I've heard that they're like, actually, it's not true that you should, like, keep these people awake.
Oh, does it matter? Like, do you want them to fall asleep or?
I don't know. I just remember specifically reading something lately that it was like you don't need to do that after all. So I didn't read detail about it, but it just made it sound like it didn't really matter that much one way or the other.
Okay. We are not medical professionals. This is not medical advice.
Yeah, no.
Consult your doctor.
Just go to Google if you know somebody with a concussion, and I'm sure that Google will tell you exactly what to do. You should believe everything you read on the internet.
Yep. Don't call 911. Just handle yourself. In the turbo lift, Dax recovers from fluorine inhalation, and Bashir points out they have only a few hours of air in there. Dax says a year ago she would have thought Bashir was trying to be a hero coming to rescue her like that, but now she knows him better, and she knows he's just really dumb.
It was a great line. I love that, actually.
That was a good dig. Good dig. Very well done. I applaud you, Dax.
And there's a funny bit where John Ordover is talking about how, like, apparently he and David Mack both very happy with the final product of the episode, even if they didn't get that scene that they liked.
Sure.
But he's like, we didn't get to see it being filmed because we live in New York and the show was filmed in Los Angeles. But I did chat with Alexander Siddig about a bit about how he felt about doing the episode, and he loved it. He got to cuddle with Terry Farrell for days.
Nice. Quark continues to try to persuade James Cromwell to become evil or something. But James Cromwell plays the honest businessman who would never scam anybody or pass off substandard merchandise.
No, they have a very specific code about, like, determining the price for merchandise and lists off all of the things. And then he's like, and then you add, like, a reasonable profit. I'm like, well, wait a second. Isn't that where, like, the whole thing comes in? Like, what's a reasonable profit?
Right.
And it makes me wonder if, like, everyone on his planet really does do business like this, in which case you're like, man, is he going to take, like, Quark's lessons and become, like, king of the karma through, like, shady dealings? Or
is this going to be like how Ken discovered the patriarchy and he's going to take it back to Barbie land?
Exactly, yeah. Or is it that the Karama really are, you know, shady and stuff, and he's just trying to uphold their claim to, like, being good trading partners in front of an alien?
Okay, so the Karama, they're the Tulaberry wine guys, right?
Yeah, they're the ones who sold the Dosai, the Tulaberry wine, and then Quark was trying to negotiate with the Dosai, and they're like, oh, you got to go talk to the Karama.
Okay, so they got all the Tulaberries over there.
I guess so.
But Quark tells him he has to take a risk every once in a while, but James Cromwell objects to gambling. In engineering, Worf starts barking orders to a bunch of guys who look like they're not having a super great day.
As opposed to everyone else on the ship?
Right. They're looking... They got black stuff smudged all over them, so you know, like, they're in a battle situation. Kira continues trying to keep Sisko awake, and they realize they never talk about anything but work, because Kira's afraid to bring up her religious beliefs and stuff. Kira muses about the dilemma of working for a boss who is also a major figure in her religion. Sisko asks for a story, and she starts telling the well-known tale of the brothers who went to Jakala.
Mm-hmm.
That well-known and kind of lame-sounding story.
Although, yeah, I don't know that we ever hear about them being actually in Jakala in the parts of the story that we hear, but...
I assume Jakala was the city.
Well, yeah, the city that they're going to sell it to, but, like, the entire part of the story we hear seems to be, like, they're out in the field, they find the thing, and then they, like, are fighting over who should get the money.
Right. So it's like, yeah, it's before and after they've been to Jakala.
And I kept expecting it to be, like this was all before, and while they're fighting over who should get the money, like, somebody accidentally destroys the giant fruit or whatever, and it was like, there's a moral there about, but no, apparently it was like, they gave it all to charity and went back to their farm where they belonged, and I was like,
yeah.
that actually doesn't seem like that good a moral. I mean, not the giving it to charity, fine, but it's like, stay on your farm where you belong and don't try to, like, get ahead of yourself or move up in the world.
I think the moral was probably more about, like, don't be divided by greed or something, but
yeah, okay.
Still. Yeah, if it was an Earth fairy tale, they definitely would have destroyed the root, and then a bear would have come along and eaten them for good measure.
It's like, while they're arguing, the bear takes the fruit and walks off, or the root, whatever.
Down in engineering, they detect something heading toward them. Torpedoes!
Apparently Jem'Hadar torpedoes work better.
Yeah, I guess they got atmospheric tracking in those things or something.
Except for the one that hits. That one didn't work so well.
With maneuvering, they dodge one, but the second hits with a gentle plunk. It seems it has embedded itself in the mess hall, where Quark and James Cromwell are.
Yep.
Quark immediately decides they should try to defuse it, which is the worst idea ever.
Well, but fortunately, it's wedged in there tight enough that, like, atmosphere doesn't start leaking out or anything.
Yeah.
So that's good.
That would be my main concern. I would be like, let's get out of this room ASAP.
Yeah, right?
Quark grabs a toolkit and gets to work, drawing on his lock-picking skills to get into the casing. In engineering, Worf continues sternly ordering people around. O'Brien pulls him aside and suggests he go a little easier and let the engineers do the job that they're good at.
Also, I like how pissy he gets about, like, somebody has put the helm controls up in engineering, and he's like, this isn't the correct configuration for helm controls. And I'm just like, dude, these guys have probably never seen a helm control before. Like, what is your deal? Well, you quickly change the helm controls to what you want instead of complaining at other people about it.
Yeah, pull up your helm control presets.
Right, yeah. That's probably right? Like, on this kind of system, everybody, like, every helmsman probably just has their presets in there to pull up their preferred setting on the screen, right?
Yeah, like, I've known people with cars that it's like it detects whose key it is and automatically adjusts the seat and mirrors to...
Yeah.
So, this is not a super complicated sounding problem. Like, calm down, Worf.
It's like, we're in this giant emergency situation, and he's going to take 5 minutes to berate them for improper helm control layout.
It's like, I need the X and Y buttons to be left and right, not left and right trigger. In the turbo lift, it's getting cold, and Bashir and Dax huddle for warmth. Bashir confides a fantasy he used to have of getting stranded on a runabout with Dax. Dax correctly points out this is a creepy fantasy, but I totally believe that Bashir had that fantasy.
Oh, yes, I believe it, and I think she calls it like, hey, that's a weird fantasy. When I'm like, the word you're looking for is creepy,
right?
Like, let's be clear here.
She was being polite. She was being gentle. Bashir then says he's given up on chasing her and detects a bit of disappointment in Dax's response. Dax warns him off chasing her again, but he responds that now that he knows she likes it, he doesn't have to. So, I think the point of this whole storyline is to finally put to bed the Bashir and Dax weirdness, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to complain about that if that is the purpose here. Although it sounds like he's like a part of him is like, oh man, she was into it. Maybe I still have a shot here. But I'm hoping that it's more like,
I think our takeaway was supposed to be that Bashir is once and for all over it, and we're never going to have to deal with this again. But
I would approve of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice. It's nice to know. I didn't necessarily need a whole storyline doing that, but I'll take it.
Apparently, in developing the episode, they're just like, we want an ensemble thing that gives all of the cast like their moment to like do stuff. So
sure. Once again, very much like Disaster. Worf takes O'Brien's advice and gently asks the engineers if they can think of a way to make a weapon. They come up with the idea of routing the phasers through the deflector array. and Worf sends them to work, and O'Brien seems to approve.
I do like they're like, I mean, it's probably not what you want, and I'm like, he's like, hey, we have a weapon that you can use, but yeah, you probably don't want it. It's okay.
And then one guy says something. It's like, tomorrow is supposed to be my day off or something, and O'Brien's like, no.
Yeah, don't count on it.
On the bridge, Sisko isn't looking good, and Kira says, screw it, and says a prayer.
Eventually, Sisko asks for another story just to get her to stop praying.
Right. Quark and James Cromwell get to work on the torpedo, and James Cromwell lets on that he sells these torpedoes. Seems like some substandard merchandise to me, says Quark. Maybe I should offer them a refund, says James Cromwell, which sends them both into a fit of laughter.
I love when he says the substandard line, and like James Cromwell like stares at him like, what are you talking about? It was supposed to explode on impact, right?
Basically, there's two wires, and cutting one will disarm the torpedo, and cutting the other will blow them up.
Well, no, you have to pull a thing out.
Sure, equivalent. It's the equivalent of two wires.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two cans of soda or whatever in there.
Yeah, I mean they seem like fuses or something to me, where you pull the. But I don't know.
Sure, I mean so you got a 50-50 shot.
That's the gist.
Yeah, no consideration is given to just doing nothing.
Well, because it starts making a noise, like it's going to blow up soon.
Yeah, if it makes a noise, that means it's going to blow up. Maybe the guy knows. Maybe he's such an expert on this torpedo, he knows that or something. I don't know. But luckily, Quark reaches in and picks the correct thingy.
I feel like it's a really good moment of acting by both of them. I feel like because like he tells James Cromwell to pick one and just go with his instinct, which I thought at first I was like, oh, that's actually a good thing because it's like he's seen the plans. Like subconsciously, maybe he knows which is which, and so if he goes with like his first instinct, maybe it'll be right. Like I feel like that gives you at least maybe a 51% chance instead of a 50% chance, right? And so I thought that's what he was building up to, and then he's like, "No, you're thinking about it too much." I'm like, "Yeah, exactly. You got to go with like your instinct,
yeah,
because you have that information somewhere in there." And then Quark's just like, "Yeah, just like this. You reach in and he yanks one out." And like even I was like, "Oh, geez, okay." I mean, I knew they weren't gonna die, but it surprised me for a second. And the look that James Cromwell's character gets is also great, where he's just like, "I can't believe that he just did that."
I had a professor a really long time ago who would always say, if you don't know the answer to a problem or a question, immediately put whatever first answer comes to your mind, and then don't second guess it after that.
Mm-hmm.
Because probably like the first one that came to your mind is based on something that's like deep in there.
Yep.
So yeah, he pulls out the correct thing. James Cromwell is exhilarated, and Quark uses it to get James Cromwell to go into business with him. They're going to do something involving Bolian currency or something.
Yeah, I was like, aren't the Bolians part of the Federation? Why do they have a currency?
Who knows? Maybe they... I don't know. Are the Bolians even part of the Federation? I don't know.
I think so. Well, I mean, there's several of them in Starfleet, so I kind of assumed, but now hold on.
Yeah, you see those guys running around a lot in Starfleet, so I would assume they are, but...
Let's see. The Bolians are a humanoid species native to the planet Bolaris 9 in the Alpha Quadrant.
Oh, is that where the Cliffs of Bol are?
Oh, maybe.
Oh, these are the guys that are named after Cliff Bol, right?
Yeah, I think they must be. Bolians were associated with the Federation in the 23rd century. A Bolian officer was among the casualties. Okay, that's from a Discovery episode, whatever. High-ranking positions in the Federation and Starfleet. Well, Bolian territory was a hotbed between during established by to prevent them. Oh, hey, that's all a spoiler for this show. Cut that out.
That's a minor spoiler. What are you talking about?
In a scene cut from the Next Generation episode The Chase, it was implied that the Bolian homeworld was not a member of the Federation as of 2369. So,
okay. I don't know. I don't even know if the writers know or care. But,
right.
Interesting. As Kira prays, Sisko wakes up and asks what happened, and Kira starts briefing him, but he says, no, what happened to the three brothers? And then, yes, as you mentioned, he asks for another story, just so she'll stop praying. I don't think we heard that story, did we?
No, we didn't. If it's like the other story, I'm fine with
that. I wasn't
these
super inspired by that story.
These Bajoran fables need to be better.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Worf puts his plan into action, which seems to consist of using the second probe as a decoy to lure the last Jem'Hadar ship. Then they use the modified phaser to blow them up. Out of danger and with the Jem'Hadar having never called for reinforcements, apparently.
Nope.
The situation is resolved and they go home. James Cromwell on Deep Space Nine plays some Dabo and ignores Quark's advice, making a bet that makes him some money.
Yeah, I mean, it was called triple...
He triple overs instead of doubling down. So.
Yeah, so I assume that triples your money or something, given the name.
Yeah. Sounds better. Bashir talks to Morn, which he apparently finds boring, and Dax rescues him with the offer of a game of darts and calls it even.
We find out about Morn's 17 brothers and sisters or whatever.
Yep. And I guess, I don't know. I think Dax is letting herself off easy if she's calling this even for... jumping into the gas flooding hallway and dragging her to safety.
Yeah, he almost died saving your life, but now you're even. Okay.
Maybe just Morn's childhood stories are as horrible as that. I don't know.
I mean, maybe Dax has heard them before, so she knows
Right.
that they're that bad.
An engineer comes to Worf to give an update on repairs, and Worf leaves it in his capable hands. But then O'Brien interjects, is like, get it done in 12 hours, not 16.
Yeah, take that.
So I can't go too easy on these guys. And then Kira briefs Sisko in his office, and he takes her earlier suggestion of switching to a 4-shift rotation, which everybody's always buzzing about these 4-shift rotations in Star Trek.
Yep. It's a hotbed of controversy among the Starfleet community, apparently.
Yeah, it was Captain Jellicoe was all about this 4-shift rotation.
Apparently, in a future episode this season, we will see the 4-shift rotation put into effect. Spoilers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Then Sisko invites Kira to a baseball game, and she happily accepts and puts on her baseball cap and goes to Quark's to order the hot dogs.
She's like, hot dogs? He's like, yeah, Quark will know. It's fine.
Yeah, Quark will know.
The baseball cap is for the Homestead Grays, a baseball team in an American professional baseball team in the early first half of the 20th century.
Huh. Oh, so it's a really old, it's a throwback.
Yeah, it's also called the Washington Grays or the Washington Homestead Grays. It was part of the, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to use that word, leagues.
Oh, sure, yeah. I'll just bleep it out to make it sound like you said it.
Thanks, yeah, that'll be good for me. I was looking up this guy who played Stevens to see if he'd ever been up to anything interesting, but the answer is basically no.
Yeah.
Like after this, he did an episode of Baywatch one time and a couple of other small bits, and that appears to have been the end of his. Although it does say that this character of Stevens in a book, his mirror universe counterpart shows up as a member of the Terran Rebellion.
Oh, nice.
So I love that they're like, oh man, we need some more, who haven't we seen the mirror universe counterpart of from Star Trek Deep Space Nine? I know, Stevens.
Some book writers out there is like, I've always wanted to tell a Stevens story. and I finally got my opportunity.
Apparently, there's a Pocket Books Starfleet Corps of Engineers series in which Stevens also appears as a crew member of the series ship, the USS Da Vinci.
Now, Stevens is a pretty common name. So, are we sure this is the same Stevens?
Well, see, I don't know, because they're making it sound like it's clearly the same guy. Although he appears in a video game called Starship Creator, where he's called Jason Stevens. And so I could understand that them being like, well, that's definitely him because they would have designed the video game character to look like him.
Sure.
But then in that book series, the Starfleet Corps of Engineers book series, his name is Fabian Stevens.
Ooh.
So, and his article in Memory Beta is Fabian Stevens. So
cool name. Oh yeah, that's the end of the episode.
Yep.
Kira goes off and gets her hot dogs.
She's like, Quark, I'm going to need a dog. And it should be above 80 degrees Fahrenheit.
Sisko told me to get the dogs and he said they should be hot?
The actor who plays Stevens is from Sweetwater, Tennessee.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Sweetwater.
I thought I
Dixie
was
First.
too when I saw Sweetwater Tea, and then no, I kept reading and it was not. Let's see what else.
He's never been to the Rattlesnake Roundup.
Jake Sisko once again does not appear in this episode.
Right.
This is before James Cromwell appears in Star Trek First Contact, but
Right.
when asked about it, he says that he enjoyed his one appearance on Deep Space Nine, commenting that the series had truly intriguing characters.
Huh. Yeah. That's good.
The first Star Trek episode to use extensive CGI, with the Defiant, the Jem'Hadar fighter, the atmospheric probe, and the clouds all created in a computer.
You know, the shot when the Defiant goes down into the clouds, it looks a little wonky, but I was like, I could tell some special effects, some computer artist or something was trying really hard. Because, you know, the ship has to go down, it's above the clouds, then it has to go down and then be in the cloud layer, all in the same shot. So I imagine that was probably a pretty tricky thing to try.
Yeah, I mean, that would be hard to do with miniatures.
Yeah.
Yeah, like David Mack's like, this was sort of the Poseidon adventure with the crew trapped and trying to get out before the ship runs out of power. That was their original script idea anyway.
Although he wrote it after watching Das Boot.
Right, yeah.
Or Das Boot, if we're pronouncing things in German correctly.
And then it mentions that this is somewhat similar to the Star Trek Voyager episode 30 Days, where the Delta Flyer was sunk underwater.
Huh. I do not remember that one.
I didn't remember it at first, and then when I went and looked at the article for it, it's like, this story is like, Tom Paris has been demoted and put in the brig for 30 days, and like the concept wraparound is that like he's writing a letter to his dad explaining what happened to get him demoted.
So the Delta Flyer wasn't underwater for 30 days.
I guess not. No, yeah, he's in the brig.
He was in the brig for 30 days.
And I do vaguely remember this, like, Paris demoted in the brig for a long time story concept. I didn't remember the Delta Flyer underwater part.
All right. Well, what do you think of the title?
Honestly, okay, so I think the title works for what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, the Starship's never down exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it works for this episode, looking at it individually. My problem is that every time I see that title, I think of a different episode where a starship has crashed. And it's like, that's that episode, right? But no, it's not that episode, it's this episode. So
yeah, the title kind of makes it sounds like it should be a more dire situation than it is. Like,
I mean, if the starship was sinking under the ocean, then maybe that would have felt dire enough.
And then also the down would have a little bit more
right
double meaning. Also, there's the book Watership Down, which I've never read, but it's about rabbits or something, right? So
I've never read it either, but yes, that does sound familiar.
I don't know if there's any similarity between that book and this episode.
But actually, now that I think about it, it's funny because I believe that the episode that I always think of when I see this title is another episode featuring Munez.
Ooh. So we do see Munez again.
Yes, he appears in, I guess, spoiler, the season 5 episode, The Ship.
Ooh. Look forward to that.
Yeah.
So, a little wonky as a title, I think, but I guess it does the job.
I mean, apparently Munez's Mirror Universe counterpart also appears in this book, Saturn's Children, with Steven's counterpart.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
So they're co-workers in both universes, I presume.
Oh, okay. And so this explains why. Okay, so that Fabian Stevens character, where you're like, is that the same Stevens? It says this specifically mentions that in the book he remembers Munez as a great guy, a great engineer, awful poker player. So I guess that's how we know it's the same Stevens.
Okay. So a guy named Stevens knows a guy named Munez.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what I don't feel like calculating the odds of that, but okay. Episode ratings. How do you feel about Starship Down?
Watership Down. How do you feel about it? Never saw it. Okay. This episode, it's got some good stuff. It's got some fun character stuff. Like Armin Shimmerman actually mentions in here that the other reason he really liked this episode is because it lets Quark open up and describe his attitude on life, that it's supposed to be lived and you got to have a good time, take some risks. And so, I mean, I don't know that I needed expansion on Quark's character in that way, but it works. We get some fun, cute character moments, slightly creepy, with Dax and Bashir.
Uh-huh.
We get Kira and Cisco, who, she's right, have never spent much time that we've seen, like, outside of work. So it's nice to get a little bit of pushing that relationship in a different direction. And it made me remember how much she hated him at first.
Yeah.
And also, I was just like, at what point does she stop hating him? Like, when he, like, because he gets hailed as the emissary very early on. So, did she hate him when he was already a religious figure still? Like,
yeah. Well, that's one of my notes, is there's a level of deference to the emissary or reverence for the emissary, that we've never seen displayed by Kira before. I mean, in the prophecy episode, whatever it was called,
yeah,
it was kind of brought up.
But... yeah, and I mean, in that episode, she kind of specifically says how she tries to keep that part away, right, because, like, to have a professional relationship with him.
But in season 1, especially, there was a lot of friction, and we never got the impression she was secretly trying to hide her spiritual devotion or whatever.
Right. But I like the idea of pushing those two characters and their relationship further than it has been, because it's weird that we've gotten a bunch of Kira episodes, and we've gotten some... I don't feel like we've got as many Cisco episodes as we have Kira episodes, but it's true that, like, the two of them together is not something that we've seen that much.
Yeah, especially since season 1, I felt like they tried to hit that beat every once in a while with, say, Progress, when he was, trying to bring her over to the, you're not in the Resistance anymore. You're
right, yeah.
And then also in Duet, kind of, when she was wanting to lead this investigation against that Cardassian guy.
Oh, yeah, and she, like, convinces him to let her do it or whatever, yeah. So, yeah, there've been a couple. Yeah. That's a good point. There's some.
But, like, I feel like since then it's kind of tapered off, like you said.
Yeah, I think so. And then you got the Worf B story, which we've talked about, where I'm like, I don't know that it's... Like, I understand what they're doing, and I think they even mentioned it here, where it's just like, this is a continuation of the B story from Hippocratic Oath, where we're integrating Worf into this new environment. And Alexander Singer says it was terribly important that the series make him a more accessible character than he'd been on The Next Generation. And so I get what they're going for. I don't think they did it that well.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like they need something for Worf to do, and they already had him deliver a baby, so...
It's true. I kind of forgot that.
You may now give birth.
So basically, there's a lot of pieces of this episode, and I feel like they all have good points to them, and maybe some bad points. More good than bad points, I would say, on average. And it fits together okay. It's maintaining at least some tension on the Gamma Quadrant Dominion thing, even if I don't think it makes much sense that... they're keeping trade open with this race in the Gamma Quadrant, but using the Ferengi, and then we're going to go ahead and go into the Gamma Quadrant to meet them in person, where the Dominion will probably want to attack us. It's like, just send one of these guys through the wormhole, or do whatever. So,
I mean, overall, they're conducting trade. Yeah. Presumably ships are going back and forth.
They're Ferengi ships, though.
Oh, okay.
That's why they have the Ferengi middlemen.
Sure.
But, overall, I think it's okay. Like, more good than bad. Some little bits that I thought were standout. I don't dislike it, so it would have to be a lieutenant commander for me.
All right. Yeah, so, first of all, I find this episode a welcome relief from the heavy subject matter of the previous, 4 episodes.
That's fair.
Where we had The Visitor, we had... Jem'Hadar with O'Brien and Bashir getting into it.
Yeah, it feels much less... What did we call it? Or what were you calling it? It's like Oscar bait, but for...
Captain Bait?
Captain Bait, yes, thank you. It feels way less Captain Baity than several of the recent episodes.
Yeah, it feels like there's, hey, let's make a fun adventure episode. And I do appreciate the fun, creative concept. Something different. we don't see every day. Even though, like we said, it's very much like the Next Generation episode Disaster, but you throw in the kind of submarine element, it's, kind of fun. But yeah, I'm kind of on the same where a lot of the individual stories I just wasn't super up on. Like, I don't really need a bow wrapped on the Dax Bashir relationship. I don't need to see Worf learn leadership lessons. I really didn't need to see James Cromwell learn how to be a bad businessman from Quark. Although, there were fun moments in each of those stories. And then the Kira and Sisko kind of being like, hey, let's be friends. Was kind of a nice little thing, but the whole, like, he has to have a concussion, she has to keep talking. I'm not a big fan of that whole thing.
It feels a little bit forced, yeah.
But overall, yeah, it's just kind of a nice, fun little watch. Nothing super great, but I'm perfectly happy giving it a lieutenant commander also. So,
This just occurred to me when you started talking about the previous episodes. But does Bashir rushing in to like save Dax remind you of the previous episode where Dax walks down the force field to save someone?
Very slowly down the force field.
Yeah, he's a little faster than she was. That's fair.
When there was a door right there, I just kept thinking, it's like, how long would it take you to run around and go to that door? But I mean, she made a judgment call. I won't question her on it, I guess. But it was just so funny because in that scene, Michael Eddington was there. It's like, we have seconds before the whole ship blows up. She's like, I can do it. And then turns on the force field and then just starts tiptoeing down the force field.
It's true, yeah.
Anyway, that's a different episode.
Yeah.
That was factored into my rating for that episode. Don't worry.
So, okay, at the end of the episode, I have, and I'm spitballing it. I don't have all the details worked out, but a proposition for a new thing to put at the end of the episode before your sign off.
All right.
I feel like we should make some sort of reference to it's like, come back for the next episode where we'll talk. It'll be like, we'll talk about, and let me see, in this scenario, it's like, come back for the next episode where it will be an incredible political thriller, or we'll be discussing this political thriller set on Earth. Or that's not quite exactly
political thriller is a bit of a stretch, but
that's the joke, is that
sure.
Like we're implying the next episode is something different from what it is by like describing it in an unusual way, and then people are going out to be like, wait, what's the next episode? Oh, I get what they're doing.
All right, we'll work on that. We'll work on that. Next episode, Little Green Men.
Yeah.
So who knows what that could be about? Maybe some little green men in it. Maybe not. Okay, so you want to take another stab at it, or?
Well, okay, hold on. So come back for our next review, where we'll be talking about Nog going to Starfleet Academy and running into some problems with some government officials on Earth.
Ooh, that Nog. Okay, well, I guess we can wrap it up there.
Sure.
If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Don't forget to check the description. Maybe something interesting in there. But I'm Fletcher, about to say goodbye as Data.
See ya.
Until we meet again, keep the blood wine warm and the prune juice chilled.